It's amazing, the things you notice when you're last on your spouse's to-do list. Like how Mira stopped saying we and started saying I when talking about the boutique. How she bought new lingerie but never wore it around me. How her inventory trips always happened when I was working late at the insurance office. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Darren Cole, 44 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years adjusting claims for people who thought they were smarter than the fine print. Turns out, all that training in spotting lies was about to come in handy in ways I never expected. The revelation came on a Tuesday morning outside Morrison's grocery, where I was buying coffee because Mira had forgotten to get any during her last 3 shopping trips. I was fumbling with my keys when someone called my name. "Mr. Cole? Darren Cole?" I turned to see a young woman with dark hair and fierce green eyes. She looked familiar in that small-town way where you've seen someone around but never really talked to them. "I'm Leah Turner," she said, glancing around nervously. "We need to talk. About your wife." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. Years of dealing with fraudulent claims had taught me to never show my cards first. "What about my wife?" Leah pulled out her phone, fingers shaking slightly as she scrolled through photos. "She's been sleeping with my father, Colin Turner. He's a contractor, travels a lot for work, or at least that's what he tells my mother." She turned the phone toward me, and there it was, a time-stamped photo of Mira walking into the lakeside cabin on Birch Road, followed by a man I recognized from around town. Colin Turner, 52, married, with the kind of arrogant swagger that probably worked on women who were bored with their steady, reliable husbands. "There are more," Leah said quietly. "Lots more. Hotel receipts, text messages, credit card statements. My mom's been sick, Mr. Cole. Really sick. Cancer. And while she's been going through chemo, my father's been screwing your wife." I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not heartbreak exactly, more like the moment when you realize you've been playing poker with a marked deck. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Leah's eyes hardened. "Because they think they're so clever, so careful. They think nobody knows, nobody cares, but I know, and I care, and I'm tired of watching my mother suffer while they play house." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't waste time being sad, Mr. Cole. Make them pay." I looked at the photos again, my mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had served me so well in my career. Evidence, timeline, patterns of behavior, financial irregularities. "Send me those photos," I said. "Already did." She showed me her phone screen. "I got your email from the insurance company website. There's more where those came from." As Leah walked away, I stood there in the grocery store parking lot, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I always wanted to be the villain in someone else's story. I just never pictured the cape being this heavy. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, making lists the way I did when working a complex claim. Mira was upstairs, allegedly doing paperwork for the boutique, but I could hear her laughing softly at something on her phone. The photos Leah had sent were damning. Timestamps showed the affair had been going on for at least 4 months. Hotel charges on days when Mira claimed to be visiting suppliers. Credit card receipts for expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. But it was the financial records that really caught my attention. Mira's boutique, Threads, had been hemorrhaging money for months. The inventory trips she'd been taking weren't just cover for her affair. They were funded by money that should have been going to rent, utilities, and supplier payments. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mira appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a silk robe I'd never seen before. "Working late again?" she asked, but there was no warmth in her voice. Just mild irritation, like I was a neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking. "Just reviewing some files," I said, closing the legal pad casually. "How was your day?" "Fine. Rita handled most of the customers. I had to deal with some supplier issues." Rita was Mira's boutique manager, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd never liked me much but respected honesty above all else. I made a mental note to pay Rita a visit soon. "Anything serious with the suppliers?" Mira shrugged. "Just the usual. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was, because Mira had stopped telling me about her business months ago. Another red flag I'd been too trusting to notice. "I'm going to bed," she said. "Don't stay up too late with those boring insurance files." After she left, I opened my laptop and started digging deeper. Bank statements, credit reports, social media activity. The picture that emerged was of a woman who'd been planning her exit strategy for months, bleeding our joint accounts dry while building a nest egg with her contractor boyfriend. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. More evidence. L." The new batch of photos showed Colin's truck parked behind Threads after hours, Mira and Colin at a restaurant in the next town over, and most damning of all, a screenshot of text messages between them discussing their future plans. I was still reading when I heard Mira's footsteps on the stairs again. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, no longer wearing the silk robe. Instead, she was fully dressed in jeans and a sweater. "Going somewhere?" I asked. She froze for just a moment, long enough for me to know she'd been caught off guard. "Rita called. There's a problem at the shop, a water leak or something. I need to go deal with it." It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. No plumber in town would be available at this hour for anything short of a catastrophic flood. And if there really was a water leak, wouldn't Rita have called me too, since I was listed as an emergency contact on the shop's insurance policy? "Want me to come with you?" I offered. "I could help assess any damage for the insurance claim." "No!" The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "I mean, no thank you. It's probably nothing serious. I'll be back soon." I watched her grab her keys and purse, noting the fresh lipstick and the perfume I could smell from across the kitchen. She was meeting Colin, of course, probably at the lakeside cabin again. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something unexpected: relief. For months, I'd been questioning myself, wondering why our marriage felt so hollow, why Mira seemed so distant and irritated with everything I did. Now I knew it wasn't me. It was her, and Colin Turner. And they had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of going to the office, I drove to Main Street and parked across from Threads. The boutique occupied the ground floor of a restored Victorian building with large windows that gave me a clear view of the interior. Rita was there, arranging displays with the kind of meticulous care that suggested she actually gave a damn about the business. Mira was nowhere to be seen, which wasn't surprising given that she'd probably rolled in around 2 a.m. from her emergency at the shop. I waited until the lunch rush faded down, then walked in. Rita looked up from the register, her expression neutral but not unfriendly. "Darren, this is a surprise. Looking for Mira?" "Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about the business." Rita's eyebrows rose slightly. "What about it?" I glanced around the shop, noting the sparse inventory, the clearance tags on half the merchandise, the general air of a business in decline. "I'm worried about Mira," I said, which was technically true. "She's been stressed lately, working long hours, taking all these trips to meet with suppliers. I'm wondering if there's something I should know about the financial situation here." Rita studied my face for a long moment. She'd been in retail for 20 years before Mira hired her, and she had the kind of sharp instincts that came from dealing with difficult customers and unreliable employees. "The books are a mess," she said finally. "Mira handles all the finances herself, Won't let me see the real numbers, but I can tell you we're not moving inventory like we should be, and some of our regular suppliers have been calling about late payments. How late? 60 days, maybe more? And these buying trips she's been taking? I've been here 6 years, Darren. I know our suppliers. Half the places she claims to be visiting, I've never heard of. I nodded, filing away this information. Has she said anything about bringing in a partner? Someone to help with the financial side? Rita's expression darkened. She mentioned something about having an investor interested in the business, someone with construction experience who might help us expand into home decor and staging services. Colin Turner. Of course. Did she mention a name? Turner, I think. Colin Turner. I kept my expression carefully neutral. What do you think about that idea? I think Mira's in over her head, and she's looking for someone to bail her out. But bringing in a partner when the books are already a mess? Rita shook her head. That's not a business decision. That's desperation. Or love, I thought. Or what Mira probably thought was love. I thanked Rita and left the shop, my mind racing with possibilities. Mira wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to merge her life with Colin's in every way possible. The boutique, our joint finances, probably even our house would all become part of their grand plan. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. That afternoon, I drove to Charlie's auto repair on the outskirts of town. Charlie Brennan had been my friend since high school, one of those guys who could fix anything with an engine and had a moral code that was flexible when it came to helping friends, but ironclad when it came to loyalty. Darren, what brings you to my humble grease pit? Charlie was under the hood of a Ford pickup, his hands black with oil. He was 52, divorced twice, and had the kind of cynical worldview that made him excellent company when you needed to plot revenge. I need a favor, I said. The kind that might involve getting your hands dirty. Charlie straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. This about Mira? I shouldn't have been surprised that he knew. In a town this size, secrets had a half-life of about 48 hours. What have you heard? Enough. Rita's sister works at the bank. Says Mira's been moving money around, acting cagey about the boutique's finances. And my cousin saw her at the Riverside Inn with some guy who definitely wasn't you. Charlie's expression hardened. That woman's been taking you for granted for years, Darren. About time you did something about it. I outlined my plan, watching Charlie's grin grow wider with each detail. You want to mess with Colin Turner's truck? He asked. That beautiful F-150 he's so proud of? Nothing permanent, nothing that would show up on a casual inspection. Just something that would be embarrassing if discovered at an inconvenient moment. Charlie rubbed his jaw, thinking. I've got some ideas. When do you want to do this? Tonight. Mira's got another inventory meeting scheduled. That evening, I sat in my living room, reading a book and waiting for Mira to leave for her fictional meeting. She came downstairs at 8 o'clock, dressed in a way that suggested inventory was the last thing on her mind. Don't wait up, she said, barely glancing in my direction. This might take a while. Drive safe, I replied, not looking up from my book. 30 minutes later, Charlie picked me up in his van. We drove to the lakeside cabin, where Colin's truck was parked in the shadows behind the building. Charlie had brought a tackle box full of supplies, raw eggs, a bag of frozen shrimp, spray paint, and various tools I didn't want to think too hard about. This is going to be beautiful, Charlie whispered as he got to work. The eggs went into the tailpipe, not enough to cause serious damage, but enough to create a spectacular backfire when the engine started. The shrimp went into the air vents, where they'd create an increasingly unbearable smell over the next few days, and the spray paint, applied in careful letters under the chassis where it wouldn't be visible unless the truck was up on a lift, spelled out a simple message, cheater. Perfect, I said, admiring Charlie's handiwork. How long before he notices? The smell? Maybe 2 days if he's lucky. The backfire? First time he starts her up. And the paint job? That's for later, when he takes it in for service and has to explain to a mechanic why someone wrote cheater under his truck. We were back at my house by 10 o'clock. Mira didn't come home until after midnight, and when she did, she went straight to bed without saying a word. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized Leah Turner's voice immediately. "It's starting," she said. "My father's truck won't start properly. He's furious, blaming it on bad gas or something. And there's a smell. How's your mother doing?" "Better, actually. She's been asking questions about where Dad's been spending his time. I think she's starting to put the pieces together." "Good. Is she strong enough to handle the truth?" "She's stronger than he thinks. Stronger than he deserves." That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Mira's landlord, a businessman named Frank Morrison, who owned half the commercial properties on Main Street. I'd handled insurance claims for Frank before, and he knew me as someone who paid attention to details. "Frank, it's Darren Cole. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I've been reviewing some financial records, and I think there might be some irregularities with Mira's rent payments for the boutique." "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that suggest she might be using business funds for personal expenses. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but as someone who's handled a lot of fraud cases, I thought you should know." Frank was quiet for a moment. "I'll look into it. Thanks for the heads up, Darren." The second call was to my sister Cassie, who practiced family law in the state capitol. "I need a lawyer," I told her. "A really good one who specializes in divorce cases where one spouse has been hiding assets." "Jesus, Darren. I'm sorry. How bad is it?" "Bad enough. Can you recommend someone local?" "I can do better than that. I can represent you myself. I've been looking for an excuse to expand my practice, and I'd love to stick it to a cheating spouse." Cassie had been divorced herself 3 years earlier, under circumstances that had left her with a deep appreciation for the importance of financial transparency in marriage. "There's one more thing," I said. "I want to make sure this is handled quietly until we're ready to move. No preliminary paperwork, no warning shots. When we strike, I want it to be devastating." "My favorite kind of case," Cassie said. "Send me everything you've got." That evening, Mira came home in a foul mood. She slammed the door, threw her purse on the counter, and glared at me like whatever was bothering her was somehow my fault. "Bad day at the shop?" I asked mildly. Frank Morrison stopped by, started asking questions about the books, about whether I was current on rent. It was humiliating. Maybe he's just being thorough. Landlords have to protect their investments. It felt like an interrogation, like he was looking for reasons to kick me out. I made sympathetic noises while internally celebrating the fact that my plan was already working. Frank Morrison was exactly the kind of businessman who would dig deeper once his suspicions were aroused. "I'm going to take a bath," Mira said. "Order something for dinner. I don't feel like cooking." While she was upstairs, I forwarded all of Leah's evidence to Cassie, along with my own financial analysis. By tomorrow morning, my sister would have everything she needed to file papers that would freeze Mira's access to our joint accounts and force full financial disclosure of the boutique's books. My phone buzzed with a text from Charlie. "Turner's truck is at Morrison's service station. Mechanic found the paint job. Word is spreading fast." I smiled, imagining Colin's humiliation as the town's most popular gossip hub, Morrison's service station, buzzed with news of his automotive scarlet letter. The water stopped running upstairs. Soon Mira would come down and we'd eat dinner together like a normal married couple, making small talk about our days while she planned her future with another man and I planned her destruction. It was almost funny, in a dark way. For months, I'd felt like I was losing at a game where I didn't understand the rules. Now I realized I'd been playing the wrong game entirely. This wasn't about marriage or love or fixing what was broken. This was about inventory, and Mira was about to learn that some items, once damaged, couldn't be returned. Saturday morning brought the kind of autumn weather that made New England postcards look inviting. Crisp air, bright sunshine, and leaves turning brilliant shades of red and gold. It was the perfect day for Mira's world to collapse. I was at the hardware store, buying supplies for a project I didn't actually need to complete, when my phone started buzzing with texts. The first was from Rita. "You need to see this. Come to the shop." The second was from Charlie. "Holy shit, turn on your phone camera and get to Main Street now." The third was from Leah. "It's happening. My mom found everything." I drove to Main Street and parked across from Threads, where a crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Through the boutique's large windows, I could see two women facing off near the register. One was Mira, her face flushed and her hands gesturing frantically. The other was a thin, elegant woman with a silk scarf covering her head, clearly undergoing chemotherapy, but carrying herself with the kind of dignity that comes from having nothing left to lose. Cynthia Turner had come to have a conversation with her husband's mistress. I got out of my car and moved closer, joining the crowd of onlookers who were pretending to window shop while actually watching the drama unfold inside. The boutique's windows were large enough that we could see everything, even if we couldn't hear the words. But we didn't need to hear them. Cynthia's body language said everything. The way she held herself straight despite her obvious illness, the way she pointed at Mira with controlled fury, the way she pulled out her phone and showed Mira something that made my wife's face go white. The photos. Leah had given her mother all the evidence. Rita stood behind the register, clearly torn between professional obligation and personal fascination. Two customers who'd been browsing the clearance rack had stopped pretending to shop and were openly staring. Then Cynthia raised her voice, and we could hear her through the glass. "You slept with my husband while I was getting chemotherapy. You're disgusting." The words carried clearly in the crisp morning air. Several people pulled out their phones, and I knew that within minutes, video of this confrontation would be spreading through every social media group in town. Mira said something in response, but Cynthia wasn't finished. "Don't you dare try to deny it. I have photos, text messages, hotel receipts. You've been using your business as a cover to meet him, haven't you? While I was sick, you were planning your little future together." Mira looked around desperately, suddenly aware of the audience. She said something to Cynthia, probably trying to get her to lower her voice, but it was too late. The damage was done. Cynthia pulled out a manila envelope and threw it at Mira's feet. Papers scattered across the floor, copies of all the evidence Leah had collected. "Keep those," Cynthia said, her voice carrying clearly through the window. "I have plenty more copies, so do the lawyers." She turned and walked toward the door with the kind of controlled grace that made everyone step aside. As she passed me, she looked directly into my eyes. "I'm sorry for your pain, Mr. Cole," she said quietly. "But I'm not sorry for what I just did." "Don't be," I replied. "She earned it." Cynthia nodded and continued walking toward a car where Leah was waiting in the driver's seat. Mother and daughter drove away, leaving behind a crowd of fascinated townspeople and one very exposed adulteress. Inside the boutique, Mira was frantically trying to pick up the scattered papers, while Rita watched with obvious disapproval. The two customers had left, probably to spread the news to everyone they knew. My phone rang. Mira's name appeared on the screen. "Darren, you need to get down here right now." "Where's here?" "The shop. Something terrible has happened. That crazy woman, Colin's wife, she came in here making accusations, causing a scene. She's completely unstable." "What kind of accusations?" "Insane things. She thinks Colin and I that we're having some kind of affair. It's ridiculous." I looked through the boutique window, where Mira was still on her knees, gathering up photos of herself entering hotel rooms with Colin Turner. "That does sound crazy," I said. "What did you tell her?" "I tried to explain that Colin and I are business partners. He's been helping me expand the boutique, maybe open a second location, but she wouldn't listen." Business partners. That was a new one. I'll be right there, I lied. Instead, I drove to the police station and filed a complaint about my car being illegally towed from a legal parking space the night before. It was a false complaint. My car had been safely in my garage, but it would create a paper trail that would be useful later. Then I drove to Morrison's service station, where Charlie was supposed to be working on a transmission rebuild. You missed the fireworks, I told him. Hell no, I didn't. Morrison's got the police scanner on, and half the town's been calling to tell us what happened. Colin Turner's wife went nuclear on your missus. Charlie wiped his hands on a rag, grinning. And speaking of Colin Turner, guess who came by this morning to pick up his truck? How did that go? Let's just say he wasn't happy about the cheater paint job. Tried to claim someone must have done it while the truck was parked here, but Morrison told him the paint was too old for that. Someone had been driving around with that message under his truck for days. What did he say? Not much he could say. Morrison asked him if there was anything he wanted to tell us about why someone might want to call him a cheater. Turner just paid his bill and left. Charlie's grin widened. But here's the best part. Morrison's got a big mouth, and by now everyone in town knows that Colin Turner's been driving around with cheater painted under his truck. People are putting two and two together real fast. My phone buzzed with another call from Mira. I let it go to voicemail. What's next? Charlie asked. Now we let the town gossip mill do its work. By tonight, everyone will know the whole story. I was wrong. It didn't take until tonight. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the video of Cynthia's confrontation with Mira had been viewed over 1,000 times on various social media platforms. The comments section was brutal. About time someone called out that home wrecker. Poor Cynthia, going through cancer and dealing with this too. Always knew there was something fake about Mira Cole. Karma's a snake. My phone rang constantly throughout the afternoon. Mira called 6 times, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. My sister Cassie called to tell me she'd filed the divorce papers and that they'd be served Monday morning. Rita called to tell me she was quitting effective immediately because she couldn't work for someone with no moral compass. But the most interesting call came from Frank Morrison. Darren, I've been looking into those irregularities you mentioned. You were right to be concerned. Mira's 3 months behind on rent, and I've discovered she's been using the business address to receive mail for some kind of investment scheme involving a contractor named Colin Turner. What kind of investment scheme? Near as I can tell, they were planning to use the boutique as collateral for a loan to start some kind of home staging business. Problem is, she never mentioned any of this to me, and the boutique lease specifically prohibits using the space as collateral without landlord approval. What are you going to do? I'm terminating her lease. She's got 30 days to get out. By 6 o'clock, Mira still wasn't home. I assumed she was somewhere trying to do damage control, probably meeting with Colin to figure out their next move. I was making dinner when Leah Turner called. How's your mother? I asked. Stronger than I've seen her in months. She said confronting your wife was the most empowered she's felt since her diagnosis. And your father? Locked out of the house. Mom changed the locks this afternoon. He's staying at the Riverside Inn, which is ironic since that's where he and your wife have been meeting. How do you know that? Mom hired a private investigator 3 days ago. We've got photos, credit card records, everything. Dad doesn't know yet, but she's filing for divorce on Monday. Same day as me? Good, they can go down together. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, eating a dinner I'd made for one, and reflected on how quickly things had changed. This morning, Mira thought she had everything under control. She had her secret affair, her financial schemes, her plans for a new life with Colin Turner. Now she was exposed, unemployed, and about to be served with divorce papers that would freeze her access to everything we'd built together. But I wasn't done, not even close. My phone rang one more time. This time, I answered. Darren, thank God. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all day. I was busy. Heard you had some excitement at the shop. It was horrible. That woman is completely insane. She came in making wild accusations, throwing papers around, screaming at me in front of customers. I think she might be having some kind of breakdown because of her illness. What kind of accusations? She thinks Colin and I are having an affair. Can you believe that? Just because we've been working together on some business plans, she's convinced herself that something inappropriate is going on. Are you having an affair with Colin Turner, Mira? The silence stretched long enough for me to know the answer. How can you even ask me that? I'm your wife. That's not an answer. Of course I'm not having an affair. Colin is a business associate, nothing more. We've been working on plans to expand the boutique, maybe open a second location, that's all. Where are you right now? Another pause. I'm at the shop, trying to clean up the mess that woman made. The shop that Rita tells me she quit today? Rita's being dramatic. She'll come back once things calm down. And Frank Morrison? Is he being dramatic too when he says you're 3 months behind on rent? This pause was the longest yet. How do you know about that? Because Frank Morrison is my client, Mira. He called me today to discuss some irregularities in your lease agreement. Irregularities involving using the boutique as collateral for loans with your business partner, Colin Turner. Darren, I can explain. No, I said quietly. You really can't. Come home, Mira. We need to talk. I'll be there in an hour. You'll be here in 20 minutes, or I'm changing the locks. I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine. In 20 minutes, my wife would walk through that door and try to convince me that black was white, that up was down, that the evidence of my own eyes and ears was somehow mistaken. It was going to be an interesting conversation. But first, I had one more call to make. Cassie, it's me. Move up the timeline. I want those papers served first thing tomorrow morning. Are you sure? Once we file, there's no going back. I'm sure. It's time to finish this. Mira walked through our front door exactly 19 minutes later, her face a mask of controlled panic. She'd clearly spent the drive home preparing her defense, but I could see the cracks in her composure. Darren, we need to talk about what happened today. That woman, Cynthia Turner, she's obviously not well. The chemotherapy has affected her judgment, made her paranoid and delusional. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and a manila folder full of documents. I didn't invite her to sit down. Show me your phone, I said. What? Your phone. Show me your text messages with Colin Turner. I don't have to show you anything. You're acting just as paranoid as that sick woman. Mira, I've seen the photos. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, text messages. I know about the lakeside cabin, the Riverside Inn, the business loan applications. I know about everything. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her calculate her options. Deny everything and hope I was bluffing? Come clean and try to minimize the damage? Or go on the offensive and try to make this somehow my fault? She chose option 3. You've been spying on me? Going through my private communications? What kind of marriage is that, Darren? The kind where one spouse is stealing money from their business to fund an affair with a married man whose wife is fading of cancer. I am not stealing money, and Cynthia Turner is not fading. She's in remission. So you admit you know about her medical condition. Interesting detail for someone who claims to have only a business relationship with her husband. Mira's face flushed. Colin mentioned it in passing. I felt sorry for her. Sorry enough to sleep with her husband while she was going through chemotherapy. I am not sleeping with Colin Turner. I opened the manila folder and pulled out one of the photos Leah had sent me. It showed Mira and Colin kissing in the parking lot of the Riverside Inn. Then what's this? Mira stared at the photo, her face going white. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Is this you or isn't it? She sank into the chair across from me, all pretense finally crumbling. Darren, I can explain. I'm listening. Colin and we didn't plan for this to happen. We were working together on the business expansion, spending a lot of time together, and things just developed. Things developed. That's one way to put it. I never meant to hurt you. But our marriage has been over for years, Darren. We both know it. We're like roommates, not husband and wife. So instead of talking to me about it or suggesting counseling or asking for a divorce, you decided to steal money from your business to fund an affair with a married man. I didn't steal anything. The money I used was from the business profits. What profits, Mira? According to Frank Morrison, you're 3 months behind on rent. According to Rita, you haven't paid your suppliers in 2 months. The only money coming into that business is from our joint checking account, which means you've been stealing from me to pay for your affair. Mira's face crumpled. It's not like that. Colin and I are in love. We're planning a future together. The business loan was going to solve all the financial problems. A business loan that you were going to secure using property you don't own, with a man who's married to someone else. Did you really think that was going to work? Cynthia's not going to live much longer, Mira said quietly. The cancer is worse than Colin lets on. We were going to wait, but the business opportunity couldn't wait. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. My wife was planning her future around another woman's passing. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my house. Right now. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. This house is in my name only, purchased before we were married. You have no legal claim to it. That was a lie, but Mira didn't know enough about property law to challenge it. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave voluntarily. If you refuse, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Another lie, but a convincing one. Mira stared at me, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Not the passive, reliable husband she'd taken for granted, but someone who'd been carefully documenting her betrayals and planning his response. I need to pack some things. You have 10 minutes. While she was upstairs, I called Cassie. The papers are ready, she said. I'll have them served at 8 a.m. tomorrow. She just admitted to the affair, and to using marital assets to fund it. Did you record the conversation? No, but I don't think I'll need to. She's going to crack under pressure. Don't be so sure. Cheaters can be surprisingly resilient when their backs are against the wall. We'll see. Mira came downstairs with a suitcase and her laptop bag. Her face was streaked with tears, but there was anger in her eyes too. This isn't over, Darren. I'm going to fight for what's mine. Good luck with that. After she left, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat in my living room, surrounded by the silence of a house that finally felt peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Colin. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. 20 minutes later, another text. I know you're angry, but this situation affects all of us. We should handle this like adults. I deleted that one too. The third text came an hour later. Mira is at the Riverside Inn, room 237. She's very upset. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong about some things. This time, I responded, You're right. I was wrong about one thing. I thought my wife had better taste in men. My phone rang immediately. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 3 minutes of Colin Turner trying to sound reasonable while essentially admitting to everything I'd accused him of. He talked about complicated situations and adult relationships and finding happiness where you can. He never once apologized. The next morning, I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when there was a knock at my door. Through the window, I could see a young woman in a business suit holding an official-looking envelope. Darren Cole? That's me. You're being served with divorce papers. I took the envelope, confused. I think there's been a mistake. I'm the one filing for divorce. The process server checked her clipboard. These are from Mira Cole, filed yesterday afternoon. You're being sued for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse and financial control. I opened the envelope and read the papers. Mira was claiming that I'd been emotionally abusive throughout our marriage, that I'd controlled the finances to prevent her from achieving independence, and that I'd driven her to seek comfort elsewhere through my neglect and hostility. She was also claiming half of everything we owned, including the house, my retirement accounts, and her boutique. My phone rang. Cassie. Did you get served? How did you know? Because I just got served too. Mira hired a lawyer yesterday and beat us to the courthouse by 3 hours. Can she do that? She can file, but her claims are bullshit. Emotional abuse, financial control. She's going to have a hard time proving any of that, especially with all the evidence we have of her affair and financial mismanagement. What's our next move? We file our countersuit today, and we include everything: the affair, the embezzlement, the fraud. We're going to bury her. Good. There's something else, Darren. I did some research on Colin Turner last night. He's not just some contractor. He's got a history of this kind of thing. What do you mean? He was sued for alienation of affection in North Carolina 3 years ago. Another married woman, another business partnership that turned personal. The woman left her husband, Turner left his wife, and 6 months later he dumped the woman and went back to his family. He's done this before. Multiple times, near as I can tell. He's a predator, Darren. He targets women in vulnerable situations, unhappy marriages, financial problems, business troubles, and promises to solve all their problems. Then he disappears when things get complicated. Does Mira know this? I doubt it. But she's about to find out. That afternoon, I drove to Main Street to see what was happening at Threads. The boutique was dark, with a closed sign in the window and an eviction notice taped to the door. Frank Morrison had moved fast. I was standing on the sidewalk reading the eviction notice when Rita approached. Sad, isn't it? She said. That shop had so much potential. What are you going to do now? I've got some options. Frank Morrison offered me the space at a reduced rent if I want to start my own boutique. Turns out a lot of Mira's regular customers have been asking if I'm going to reopen somewhere else. That's great news. What about you? I heard about the divorce papers. It's going to get ugly before it gets better. Rita nodded. Mira called me this morning, asking if I'd testify on her behalf, said you'd been controlling and manipulative, that you'd sabotaged her business out of jealousy. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that you've never been anything but supportive of her business, even when it was obvious she was running it into the ground, and that if anyone sabotaged her business, it was her own poor decisions. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She's not going down without a fight. And Colin Turner's been making calls around town, trying to drum up support for their side of the story. What's he saying? That you've been emotionally abusive to Mira for years, that she came to him for help and comfort, and things developed naturally from there. He's painting himself as the knight in shining armor and you as the villain. I laughed, surprising Rita. What's funny? He's right about one thing. I am the villain in this story. But I'm not his villain. I'm theirs. That evening, I was grilling a steak in my backyard when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over to the fence. Darren, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think what Mira did was terrible. That poor woman going through cancer treatment and having to deal with this. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. If you need anything, meals, someone to talk to, whatever, you just let me know. I appreciate that. And if you need someone to testify about what kind of husband you've been, I'd be happy to help. You've always been nothing but kind and respectful. After she left, I realized that Colin's campaign to paint me as the villain was backfiring. The people who actually knew me, neighbors, co-workers, longtime friends, weren't buying it. And the people who didn't know me were more interested in the drama of the affair than in taking sides. But the people who knew Mira were starting to see her differently. The woman who'd seemed confident and successful was revealed to be selfish and calculating. The business owner who'd seemed so professional was exposed as someone who'd steal from her own company to fund an affair. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. Dad moved out of the hotel. Mom thinks he's staying with your wife somewhere. I texted back, Where? Not sure, but his truck was seen at a cabin rental place outside town. So Colin and Mira had found a new love nest. Good for them. It would make the private investigator's job easier. As I finished my steak and watched the sun set over my peaceful backyard, I reflected on how much my life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, I'd been a man who suspected his wife was cheating but didn't know what to do about it. Now I was someone who'd systematically destroyed two people's lives and was just getting started. And the strangest part was how good it felt. For years, I'd been the nice guy, the understanding husband, the man who never made waves. I'd absorbed Mira's contempt and Colin's arrogance and the town's assumption that I was somehow lesser than the people who were betraying me. But I wasn't lesser. I was just more patient, and now my patience was paying off. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late October. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would destroy Mira's credibility. Cassie met me on the courthouse steps, looking like the kind of lawyer who ate opposing counsel for breakfast. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Ready?" "Good. Because this is going to be brutal. Mira's lawyer is going to try to paint you as a controlling, emotionally abusive husband who drove his wife into another man's arms. And we're going to prove that she's a lying, cheating thief who embezzled money to fund an affair with a serial adulterer." "Exactly." Inside the courtroom, I saw Mira sitting at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in representing women in contentious divorces. Mira was wearing a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, clearly trying to project an image of wounded respectability. Colin Turner was nowhere to be seen. "Where's her knight in shining armor?" I asked Cassie. "Probably doesn't want to be seen in public with her. Bad for his reputation." The hearing began with Mira's lawyer presenting her case. According to Jennifer Walsh, I was a cold, controlling husband who'd systematically undermined my wife's self-esteem and business ventures. I'd isolated her from friends, criticized her appearance, and used my knowledge of insurance and finance to manipulate her into a position of dependence. My client sought comfort and support from Colin Turner, a business associate who offered her the emotional connection she was being denied at home, Walsh said. What began as a professional relationship developed into something deeper because Mrs. Cole was starving for affection and respect. It was a compelling narrative, delivered with conviction. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed it myself. Then it was Cassie's turn. "Your Honor, the plaintiff's claims of emotional abuse and financial control are not only false, they're a calculated attempt to deflect attention from her own misconduct. The evidence will show that Mrs. Cole engaged in a systematic campaign of deception, theft, and adultery that devastated not only her marriage, but multiple businesses and families." Cassie opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "These are financial records showing that Mrs. Cole embezzled over $40,000 from her business to fund her affair with Colin Turner. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, gifts, even a weekend trip to Boston, all paid for with money that should have gone to rent, utilities, and supplier payments." She handed copies to the judge and to Walsh, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as she flipped through the pages. "These are photographs documenting Mrs. Cole's affair, including time-stamped images showing her entering hotel rooms with Mr. Turner on multiple occasions. These are text messages between Mrs. Cole and Mr. Turner discussing their future plans and mocking both Mr. Cole and Mr. Turner's wife, who was undergoing chemotherapy at the time." The judge, a stern-faced woman named Helen Rodriguez, studied the documents with obvious disapproval. "Mrs. Walsh, does your client wish to respond to these allegations?" Walsh whispered urgently with Mira, who was looking increasingly pale. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that she developed feelings for Mr. Turner, but she maintains that this was the result of years of emotional neglect by her husband. The financial irregularities were the result of poor bookkeeping, not intentional theft." "Poor bookkeeping Doesn't explain hotel receipts and restaurant bills, Judge Rodriguez said dryly. Mr. Cole, I'd like to hear from you directly. Can you describe the state of your marriage prior to discovering your wife's affair? I stood up, feeling calmer than I had in months. Your Honor, I thought we had a good marriage. We had our problems like any couple, but I believed we were working through them. I supported my wife's business ventures both financially and emotionally. When she told me she needed to take inventory trips and meet with suppliers, I trusted her. When she said the business was struggling and needed additional investment from our joint accounts, I agreed. When did you first suspect something was wrong? When a concerned citizen showed me photographs of my wife entering a hotel with another man. That's when I began investigating and discovered the extent of both the affair and the financial mismanagement. Mrs. Cole, would you like to respond? Mira stood up, her voice shaking slightly. Your Honor, my husband is making me sound like a monster. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I developed feelings for someone else. But it happened because my marriage was already over. Darren had become cold and distant. He criticized everything I did, questioned every business decision, made me feel like I couldn't do anything right. Can you provide specific examples of this alleged emotional abuse? Mira looked at her lawyer, who nodded encouragingly. He would go through my phone and computer, checking up on me. He questioned every expense, every business decision. He made me account for every minute of my time. It was like living with a warden, not a husband. I felt Cassie tense beside me, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. Mira had just described exactly the kind of behavior that would be justified if someone suspected their spouse of cheating and embezzling. Mr. Cole, did you monitor your wife's communications and financial activities? Yes, Your Honor, but only after I had evidence of the affair. I'm an insurance investigator by profession. When I suspect fraud, I investigate. When I found evidence that my wife was stealing money from her business to fund an affair, I documented it. Mrs. Cole, can you explain these hotel receipts and restaurant bills that were paid for with business funds? Mira's face flushed. Those were business meetings. Colin was helping me develop a business plan for expansion. Business meetings that required hotel rooms? Sometimes our meetings ran late, and it was more convenient. She trailed off, realizing how weak her explanation sounded. Judge Rodriguez looked at the financial records again, then at the photographs, then at Mira. Mrs. Cole, I've been presiding over divorce cases for 15 years, and I've heard every excuse in the book. But I've never had someone try to convince me that a 4-month affair was actually a series of business meetings. The courtroom was silent. Furthermore, the financial evidence clearly shows a pattern of embezzlement. You used business funds to pay for personal expenses related to your affair, while failing to pay legitimate business expenses like rent and supplier payments. Judge Rodriguez closed the folder and looked directly at Mira. Your claims of emotional abuse are not supported by any credible evidence, while the evidence of your financial misconduct and adultery is overwhelming. I'm granting Mr. Cole's petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. Your Honor, Walsh interjected, my client is entitled to marital property regardless of the circumstances of the divorce. Under normal circumstances, yes, but Mrs. Cole's embezzlement of marital assets changes the calculation. Mr. Cole is awarded the marital home, his retirement accounts, and his personal property. Mrs. Cole is responsible for all debts related to her business, including the outstanding rent and supplier payments. Mira burst into tears. That's not fair. I gave up my career for that man. I supported him for 15 years. Mrs. Cole, you gave up your career to start a business that you then used as a cover for an affair and a source of funding for that affair. The court has no sympathy for your situation. Judge Rodriguez signed the divorce decree and handed it to the clerk. This hearing is adjourned. As we left the courtroom, Mira was sobbing in her lawyer's arms, while Walsh tried to console her with promises of an appeal. But we all knew the appeal would fail. The evidence was too clear, the judge's ruling too well reasoned. How do you feel? Cassie asked as we walked down the courthouse steps. Like I just won the lottery. You kinda did. She's going to be responsible for about $60,000 in business debts, and she has no income and no assets. Meanwhile, you get to keep everything you worked for. What about Colin Turner? What about him? He's not your problem anymore. But I wasn't so sure about that. Colin Turner had helped destroy my marriage, and from what Cassie had told me about his history, he was probably already planning his exit strategy. Mira was about to learn that her knight in shining armor was actually a con man in cheap aluminum foil. That evening, I was celebrating with a bottle of wine and a steak dinner when my phone rang. It was Leah Turner. Congratulations, she said. I heard about the divorce hearing. Thank you. How's your mother doing? Better every day. She filed for divorce yesterday, and Dad's been served with papers. He's trying to convince her to give him another chance, but she's done. And what about Colin and Mira? That's why I'm calling. They had a huge fight last night. The neighbors at the cabin rental called the police because of the noise. What were they fighting about? Money, mostly. Mira expected Colin to help her with the legal bills and the business debts. Colin told her he was broke and couldn't help her. Is he broke? Not exactly. But he's not stupid either. He knows Mira's a sinking ship and he's not going down with her. So he's abandoning her. Looks like it. His truck was seen heading toward the interstate this morning. Mom thinks he's going back to North Carolina. I felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy for Mira. She'd given up her marriage, her business, and her reputation for a man who was now abandoning her when she needed him most. But the moment passed quickly. Mira had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. Leah, I want to thank you for everything you did. If you hadn't shown me those photos... Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. What do you mean? Mira's been calling around town, trying to get people to feel sorry for her. She's telling anyone who'll listen that you framed her, that Colin was innocent, that the whole thing was a setup. Is anyone buying it? A few people. Enough to cause problems for you if you're not careful. What kind of problems? The kind where people start wondering if maybe you're not the victim you appear to be. If maybe you're actually a manipulative bastard who destroyed 2 families for revenge. I thought about that for a moment. It was possible, I supposed, that some people might see it that way, but I didn't think most people would. Let them wonder, I said. I know what the truth is. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you enjoyed destroying those people a little too much. The line went quiet for a moment. I'm not judging you, Leah said finally. They deserved what they got. But be careful, Darren. Revenge has a way of changing people. Don't let it change you into someone you don't want to be. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen, thinking about what she'd said. Had I enjoyed destroying Mira and Colin? Yes, I had. More than I probably should have. But they'd earned it. They'd lied, cheated, stolen, and betrayed not just me, but everyone who'd trusted them. They'd planned their future on the assumption that Cynthia Turner would fade and leave them free to be together. If that wasn't evil, it was close enough. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I deleted it without responding, but I saved the number. If Mira or Colin wanted to make threats, I'd be ready for them. After all, I'd learned a lot about revenge in the past few weeks, and I was just getting started. 3 days after the divorce hearing, I was having breakfast when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw Mira walking toward my front door, her face set in determined lines. I let her knock 3 times before I answered. What do you want, Mira? We need to talk. We don't need to do anything. We're divorced. You have no reason to be here. Please, Darren, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under her eyes. The confident, polished woman who'd run Threads was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and defeated. I know you hate me, she began, and I know I deserve it. but I need you to understand something. I'm listening. Colin's gone. He left yesterday morning without saying goodbye, cleaned out the cabin and disappeared. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. You're glad. You wanted this to happen. I didn't deny it. The thing is, Darren, I think you planned all of this. I think you knew about the affair long before that Turner girl told you. I think you've been setting us up for weeks. She was smarter than I'd given her credit for. Does it matter? It matters because you destroyed my life for revenge. Not for justice, not for closure, but because you wanted to hurt me. You destroyed your own life, Mira. I just documented it. You manipulated everything. You got Rita to turn against me. You convinced Frank Morrison to evict me. You probably even arranged for Cynthia Turner to confront me at the shop. I didn't arrange anything. I just made sure the right people had the right information at the right time. Mira stared at me, and I could see her finally understanding who she'd been married to for 15 years. You're not the man I married, she said quietly. No, I'm not. The man you married was a fool who trusted his wife and ignored obvious signs that she was lying to him. That man is gone. What happened to you? I got tired of being everyone's second choice. Your second choice after Colin, Colin's second choice after his reputation, the town's second choice after the more interesting people who were screwing each other behind everyone's backs. I walked to the kitchen table and picked up a manila folder I'd prepared for this conversation. But here's the thing, Mira. I was never anyone's second choice. I was just patient enough to let everyone else hang themselves first. I handed her the folder. Open it. Inside were copies of financial records showing that Colin Turner had opened 3 credit cards in Mira's name without her knowledge, running up over $20,000 in debt. There were also copies of police reports from North Carolina showing that Colin had been arrested twice for fraud and once for assault. Where did you get these? I'm an insurance investigator, remember? I know how to find information about people. Mira's face went white as she read through the documents. He was using me. He was using you, just like he used the woman in North Carolina and the woman in Virginia before that. Colin Turner makes a living seducing unhappy wives, convincing them to leave their husbands, and then cleaning out their bank accounts before disappearing. You knew this when we were in court. I knew it. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have believed me. You had to learn it for yourself. Mira sank into a chair, the folder falling from her hands. So everything was a lie. Colin never loved me, never wanted a future with me. He was just running a con. A very effective con. You gave him access to your business accounts, your personal information, even your credit. He probably made more money off you than he did from his actual construction jobs. And you let it happen. I didn't let anything happen. You chose to have an affair, you chose to steal money from your business, you chose to trust a man you barely knew over a husband who'd never given you any reason to doubt him. But you could have stopped it. Why would I want to stop it? You were giving me everything I needed to destroy you in court. The words hung in the air between us, and I saw Mira finally understand the depth of my anger and the extent of my planning. You're a monster, she whispered. Maybe, but I'm a monster you created. She stood up, her face twisted with rage. I'm going to tell everyone what you really are. I'm going to make sure this whole town knows that you're not a victim. You're a predator who destroyed 2 families for revenge. Go ahead, tell them. See how many people believe the woman who stole $40,000 to fund an affair with a con man. Some people will believe me. Maybe. But it won't matter. Why not? I smiled, feeling something cold and satisfied settle in my chest. Because I'm not done yet. Mira stared at me, fear replacing anger in her eyes. What do you mean? I mean, Colin Turner made one mistake when he decided to run his con on my wife. He forgot to cover his tracks completely. I walked to my laptop and opened a file I'd been working on for the past week. Colin used your credit cards to book hotel rooms in 3 different states over the past 2 months. But he wasn't alone in those rooms. He was with other women, married women whose husbands are probably just as clueless as I was. I turned the laptop screen toward Mira, showing her a spreadsheet with names, dates, and locations. I've been in contact with these women's husbands. Turns out Colin's been running multiple cons simultaneously. He's not just a serial adulterer, he's a professional fraud artist. What are you going to do with this information? I've already done it. I sent everything to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit yesterday morning. Colin Turner is about to become a federal fugitive. Mira's face went completely white. You're going to destroy him. I'm going to make sure he faces consequences for his actions, just like you did. But I loved him. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of him. You loved the excitement, the secrecy, the feeling of being chosen by someone who seemed more interesting than your boring insurance adjuster husband. I closed the laptop and looked directly into her eyes. But here's what you never understood, Mira. I was never boring. I was just careful and patient and thorough. You planned all of this from the beginning. Not from the beginning, but once I knew what you were doing, yes, I planned every step. The vandalism of Colin's truck, Cynthia's confrontation at your shop, the financial investigation, the divorce proceedings, all of it was designed to achieve maximum damage to both of your lives. Why? Why go so far? Because you didn't just cheat on me, you humiliated me. You made me look like a fool in front of the entire town. You stole money that we'd saved together to fund your affair. And worst of all, you did it all while pretending to be the victim of my neglect and abuse. I stood up, towering over her. You wanted to destroy my life and start a new one with Colin Turner, so I let you try. And then I destroyed both of your lives instead. Mira was crying now, but I felt no sympathy for her. The beautiful part is that it was all legal. I didn't break any laws, didn't commit any crimes. I just made sure that the truth came out at the worst possible moment for both of you. You're proud of this. I'm satisfied with it. She stood up, wiping her eyes. I hope you're happy, Darren. I hope destroying us was worth becoming the kind of person who could do something like this. It was. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, watching the sun set over the town that had spent the last month talking about my personal business. My phone rang. It was Charlie. Heard Mira paid you a visit. News travels fast. She stopped by the shop afterward. Wanted to know if I'd help her prove that you'd been planning this whole thing from the beginning. What did you tell her? I told her that even if you had been planning it, she still chose to cheat on you and steal money from her business. Planning or not, she earned what she got. Thanks. Don't mention it. By the way, you might want to turn on Channel 7 tonight. They're doing a story about Colin Turner. I turned on the news at 11 o'clock. The lead story was about a multi-state fraud investigation involving a contractor who'd been running romance scams on married women across New England. Colin Turner, 52, is wanted by federal authorities in connection with fraud charges in 4 states, the anchor reported. Turner allegedly used dating websites and business networking to target married women, convincing them to leave their husbands and provide him with access to their financial accounts. They showed Colin's mugshot from his previous arrest in North Carolina, followed by interviews with 2 of his victims. He made me feel like I was special, one woman said, her face blurred to protect her identity. He said he loved me, that we were going to start a business together. I gave him access to my savings account and he cleaned it out. The reporter mentioned that Turner was believed to be fleeing toward Mexico, and that anyone with information about his whereabouts should contact the FBI. I turned off the TV and finished my wine, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Mira had been right about one thing. I had planned most of this. But she'd been wrong about my motivations. It wasn't just revenge I'd been after, it was justice. For 15 years, I'd been a good husband to a woman who'd taken me for granted. I'd supported her dreams, funded her business, and trusted her completely. In return, she'd lied to me, cheated on me, and stolen from me. Colin Turner had made a career out of destroying marriages and stealing money from vulnerable women. He'd left a trail of broken families across multiple states, always moving on before facing consequences. And the town I'd lived in for 20 years had been ready to believe that I was somehow the villain in this story, that my wife's affair was really my fault for being too controlling or too neglectful or too boring. So I'd given them all exactly what they deserved. Mira got to experience what it felt like to be publicly humiliated and financially ruined. Colin got to experience what it felt like to be hunted by federal authorities. And the town got to watch it all unfold like a soap opera, complete with dramatic confrontations and shocking revelations. As for me, I got my life back. I got a house that was finally peaceful, bank accounts that were finally secure, and a reputation that was finally accurate. I wasn't the boring insurance adjuster who'd been too stupid to see what his wife was doing. I was the patient, methodical man who'd systematically destroyed everyone who'd betrayed him. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah Turner. Saw the news about Colin. Mom wanted me to thank you for making sure he faced consequences. I texted back, tell her she's welcome. A few minutes later, another text. Are you happy now? I thought about that question as I locked up my house and got ready for bed. Was I happy? I was satisfied. I was vindicated. I was free. But happy? That was a more complicated question. I'd spent the last month becoming someone I'd never been before, calculating, ruthless, and completely without mercy for people who'd wronged me. I'd discovered that I was very good at destroying lives when I put my mind to it. The question was whether I could go back to being the man I'd been before, or whether this new version of myself was permanent. I decided I didn't care. The old Darren Cole had been weak, trusting, and naive. He'd let people walk all over him and had convinced himself that being nice was the same as being good. The new Darren Cole understood that sometimes being good meant being ruthless, sometimes justice required revenge, and sometimes the only way to stop people from hurting you was to hurt them back so badly that they never forgot the lesson. I'd learned that I had a talent for revenge, and I'd learned that I enjoyed using that talent. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was very, very good at it. As I fell asleep in my quiet house, I thought about Mira, probably crying herself to sleep in whatever cheap motel she could afford. I thought about Colin Turner, looking over his shoulder for FBI agents as he fled toward the Mexican border. I thought about all the people in town who'd spent the last month gossiping about my personal life, and were now probably wondering what I might do if they crossed me. And I smiled. Inventory was canceled, the books were balanced, and my villain arc was just getting started.